Hello and welcome to the Progress Elections podcast. My name's Kiran Ramchandani.
And I'm Sachin, Shah.
And we're both former Harrow councillors and cabinet members and long-standing Labour activists. And we set ourselves a challenge to campaign in all 32 London boroughs. And we've had the most amazing experience. We've met some brilliant councillors, candidates and Labour activists across London.
And you can see some of the leaflets we picked up on the way. The conversations have been really interesting, and today we're going to be talking about the Green Party and how they're impacting on Labour Party campaigns across London.
Yeah, so what have we seen on the doorstep? So particularly in boroughs like Hackney, Haringey and Waltham Forest, based on our canvassing sessions, I'd say that's where the Green support is the strongest. But remember, it's just a snapshot of what we've seen in those boroughs based on our canvassing sessions. There is also Green support in Lambeth, Lewisham, Islington and parts of Camden. So it's really strong in inner London. That's not to say that there isn't Green support in outer London as well. There is, but it's not enough to make a significant impact, mainly in a few wards where there's some young, affluent voters. And we're definitely seeing a shift in the Muslim community from Labour to Green, with a lot of people using Gaza as their primary reason. And just generally, there seems to be a real sense of disappointment, I'd say, particularly with those lifelong Labour voters who really want to stick with Labour and vote for Labour, but they don't feel that they can in this election. So we really picked up on a sense of frustration, but also sadness. And the issues that keep coming up again and again are Gaza, cost of living. Older voters still mention the cuts to winter fuel payment. That is still sticking around. But mostly there's a general feeling of disappointment and dissatisfaction, both with where the country is and just generally people feeling that their lives are not improving. And I think part of it is that expectations were incredibly high coming in when Labour came into government in 2024. We promised change, and I think that the voters are thinking that change is not coming fast enough. And for some reason, the achievements, the great work that we have done in government is not cutting through enough.
And I guess, although these are council elections, there's a lot of talk about the international issues. But, I know that's been talked about a lot in these campaigns, but it's not anything new. Ever since we've had local elections, really often they're used as a bit of a referendum, bit of a kind of an opinion on what the national government's doing. So it is frustrating. Councils aren't dealing with Gaza. There's not anything in their power, but that is something that's coming up on the doorstep, and it's always been the case.
But it feels more this time. I think particularly with Gaza, people are really not thinking about the local issues and thinking about the responsibilities that their councils have. And it's a real shame. And I think what's really interesting is when you probe voters and you have a little bit more of a conversation with people and you ask them what they think about their local council, the majority of the time, people are actually really satisfied with their local council, particularly if they're living in Labour areas. Labour knows how to run councils and we do it well, and we are doing it well. And people are generally satisfied with their local services. But it's very much a protest vote on national issues at the moment and international. But what we've seen are some good campaigns being run in those inner London boroughs, and we've been seeing how Labour's combating that green message in different ways.
Yes, and you can see behind me some of the many leaflets that we've picked up on the way, and it's been quite interesting to read what different boroughs are doing. So in places like Waltham Forest, they're really squeezing hard, talking about risking the council being in hung council territory and what that might mean for services. In Haringey, it's often talked about antisocial behaviour and how actually the Labour Party can be dealing with it, and what impact having the Greens are. And then so some councils have gone really strong on really attacking a Green Party in a very here are our opponents and this is why you shouldn't be voting for them. Newham's done some specific leaflets on it, as is Hackney, and often it's about focusing on the Green record, which has been atrocious in local government. You look at Brighton, you look at Bristol, where the Green Party are opposing social housing, cutting social housing targets, and in some places doing things that are completely not green. So there's a huge amount of attacking the Greens on issues around competence and how they run the council. The other really important way, Westminster, for instance, is focused very heavily on, while they don't mention the Greens, they make it very clear in their literature, this is a fight between Labour and Conservatives, and a vote for anyone, if you're a progressive and you're voting for anyone else, that will let the Conservatives in. And I think that's a message that we heard work very well. The other bits that other councils like Brent are doing really successfully is actually just focusing on the issues. I mean, it's something that I get quite passionate about. When we talk about the Greens and the issues, we end up on their turf, and we've got so many. We only, as a party, as much as we want to say lots of things, people only listen to 2 or 3 things from us. And where we can do well is people like Brent talking about the high streets and their campaign, actually going out on the doorstep with petitions about what they're doing on the betting shops in the high street, on skips. We also saw that in Hillingdon, where we went out with a petition, anti-social behaviour, and actually really focusing on what the Labour Party is doing is a really important way of bringing people along with us, rather than sometimes trying to squeeze the Greens.
And I think how we canvass in this election is different as well, and the questions we're asking are quite helpful to having a conversation with people, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. What the party have this time, it's not a question we have been asking before. The right question: is there anyone you would not want to vote for? And that's really it really helps those conversations, because if people say they really don't want Conservative or Reform or whoever they're saying, and then you're in an area where a vote for the Greens or Progressive, and another progressive party, or someone that at least the voters think is progressive, would lead to another party winning, you can put that discussion to them. So it's a really, really useful way of understanding insights of people voting, and then being able to help talk to them about what the implications are of a vote for another party. Ultimately, of course, people will vote for who they vote for, but our job has to be to inform people of what the votes and the implications of those are.
Exactly. We caught up with a couple of council leaders in London who are facing a threat from the Greens. First, we caught up with Peter Mason, who's the leader of Ealing Council, and Richard Olszewski, who's the leader of Camden Council. Should we have a listen to what they had to say?
So I think what we've really got to do as a whole Labour movement is not sort of lose our heads over the Gorton and Denton by-election outcome. And whilst absolutely we know that the Greens are in the ascendancy in the same way that the Liberal Democrats were in the early 2000s, I see it a lot like the Brent East by-election, that the Greens are effectively the mainstream political party that's neither the government nor the main opposition, and they're occupying that space quite effectively. We can't lose sight of the fact that we face multiple challenges on multiple different fronts. This is the Pentagon election, as it's been termed by others who are not me, in which just in Ealing, just as the rest of the country and in large parts of London, we're not just facing a threat from insurgent Greens, we're also facing a threat from insurgent Reform. The Liberal Democrats haven't gone away, and the Conservatives are desperately trying to rebuild. So I don't want to disproportionately focus on the Greens in our conversation. We can talk about the fact that we've done more to tackle the climate emergency in the last 4 years than we have in the last 4 decades. We have a really proud, strong track record of increasing the number of biodiverse parts of our urban environment. We're rewilding like crazy in Ealing. We've brought back beavers and field mice and peregrine falcons. I keep on being told that I'm not allowed to put wolves into the manifesto. That is a joke. But we've done loads on flood protection and sustainable urban drainage. We've been really clear about our theory of practice on and our theory of change in securing people to think about active travel. We've got every single one of our schools now, a school streets programme in place. And we're really, really focused on things like, for example, renewable energy on all of our public buildings and across our schools estate. There is so much that we've achieved, and not least the prospect of a huge new regional park for West London across sort of the Brent River and Canal area. We've done so much in this small period of time, and we've done that as a Labour Party with Labour values at the heart of it, ensuring that we are making our communities resilient to the climate emergency. because they're the ones that are going to suffer if we don't. That is a strong track record. Voting Green or any other party is simply going to let reform in through the back door. And we all know what will happen on climate action if the Reform Party get control of government either locally or nationally. It will go away. So if people really want to tackle the climate emergency and they want a political party that absolutely is focused on ensuring that we tackle the cost of living crisis, then the natural choice is to vote Labour.
And now we hear from the leader of Camden Council.
Yes, I mean, Camden faces the same political challenges that every other local authority is facing at the moment. Even though these are local elections and we're focusing on local issues, and we've just published the Camden Labour Manifesto with 249 individual pledges within it, all about what we're trying to do locally to improve the situation in Camden. And we have a really strong track record to campaign on, with a council that's been officially rated outstanding across our social services. However, people are still judging how they vote on the basis of what is happening at national and international level as well. And we don't have a role in that, so we have to try and say to people, look, understand you've got views about things on the bigger picture, but bear in mind, here's the situation in Camden, here's what Labour has done. We're a really good council, and here are our ideas for the future, addressing lots of need we have in the borough. So we focus on that. We've got multiple challenges. It's I think we're in a quite unprecedented situation. We've been through periods, obviously, when Labour has been unpopular before. Yes, that's happened in the past. But I think what we see now across our politics is a fragmentation at the moment. We don't know how. Time will tell how deep-seated it will be and how long-lived. But nevertheless, there is this fracturing of political opinion and political leanings, which is impacting Camden just as it is everywhere else. I suppose our difficulty in Camden is that we don't face a single opposition threat. Yes, we have Greens challenging us in some parts, we have Lib Dems challenging us in others, and there is still some signs of life among Camden Tories as well, who threaten us in some seats as well. We tackle all that by focusing on what we have to offer. We can expose the contradictions of opposition parties like the Greens, who pose as a progressive party, and yet we've found in Camden that they are routinely opposing housing proposals that we bring forward to help those most in need. So we expose those kind of contradictions and remain true to the Labour values that inform what we do in Camden.
So many interesting things there. I thought it was really, really interesting how Peter said that we shouldn't be panicking about the Green vote and the Green threat. And whilst I think that's probably right in the long term, I do think it is presenting us with an immediate problem.
I mean, I think even in the short term, I think Peter's right to say not to panic. I think we have to remember that it is very difficult for new parties under the first past the post system to get over the line. You have to be very careful with your targeting in order to win. And the Greens are standing candidates in majority of the wards across London. They've spread themselves very thin. And I suspect for a new party, in a parliamentary by-election, they can move lots of resources into one place very easily. Spreading themselves across the whole of London could mean that they end up with lots of very good second places, but not quite enough to get over the line.
Let's hope so. And I know what Richard said about house building and the Green record is a topic very close to your heart.
Absolutely. I've been a proud YIMBY for a long time, and house building is such an important thing that we can do in government, local government, regional government and national government to aid with it's a good progressive policy. You know, the Greens talk about being about social mobility, about progressive values, but yet campaigning against housing. It's such a basic human need, and it's, getting more houses built and people out of homelessness and into housing allows people to get on with their lives and jobs and everything else. And we know it helps people's health. So some great work that local councils are doing in Ealing and Camden, and actually so many Labour councils and Sadiq across London, and then the government as well. But it is really important that we the Greens are capitalising on NIMBY campaigns and people against it. But I think it's really important. We can't just simply call people NIMBYs. We have to understand that actually for a local person, if your vista outside your window was a nice open space and now it's going to be a tall building, you have lost out as an individual. Society is better off, and it's absolutely right that elected decision makers who are elected to make decisions for society as a whole, decisions are made where society is better off, but we should be listening to local people, not just dismissing their views. That's where the Greens can come in, but we should be talking to them. For instance, when I was leader of Harrow Council, I had this phrase of spreading the benefits of regeneration, about making sure that if you're one of those people that lose out, what could we do as a council, as a body, to help you through that? Is it upgrading your local park or other changes locally? I increased in one area where the council was building new social housing. There was a concern around parking. So we just changed the layout a little bit, added a little bit more parking in, and not reduced a single unit of social housing. It allowed us to get more social housing in, but allowed residents to come on board as well. And that will stop the Greens exploiting this issue.
And it's the same with LTNs, isn't it? The Greens are really capitalising on anti-LTN sentiment across London. And, I think there are some issues with how LTNs have been implemented. And, there's an issue where we take people's agency away and they have no control over what's happening in their area and on their street. And I think as Labour politicians, we need to listen a little bit more. In the long run, some LTNs are good and they're beneficial. But how do you do that? How do you make those unpopular decisions that are going to have long-term benefits?
Well, you have to start, and it's not easy. And when you get elected into making decisions and elected into government and running councils, you're doing it knowing that you're going to have to make some decisions that are hard. And I think the first thing to do is you need to start with what is it you're trying to achieve. Can you achieve it in a different way? If there are some concerns, what changes you can make. And LTNs are a good example of listening to local residents. So there are a number of councils, a number of great Labour councils that have looked at this issue and made changes. For instance, we know that there are a number of councils in Islington, Haringey, in Camden, where if you are a blue badge holder, now originally a lot of the policies were if you're a blue badge holder, you're exempt from the LTN rules just where you live. People don't live just where they live. They have to drive around. Doctor's surgery might happen to be in the next ward. So those councils have made those changes, and now you can, if you've got a blue badge, you can drive everywhere. And those are exactly the types of things, making difficult decisions, but then listening to where improvements can be made, where there are campaigns. And if you're a council that is shown to listen, you can actually make those difficult decisions, not necessarily get some anti-campaigns against you, while doing the right thing.
Yeah, and I think that strong leadership is really important as well, so it's a balance. We also spoke to Anthony Okereke, who's the leader of Greenwich Council, who gave us his view on strong leadership and how they're getting things done in Greenwich.
We see that the former allegiances politically are changing, and they are going to change, and we need to be able to respond to that quite quickly. One of the things I've said is that I think we have stuff to talk about in Greenwich. We've got to respond with our track record. Yes, we've been in power since 1971, but I tell you, my residents all the time, you do not want a council in overall control who will spend the next few years debating and discussing. The council is not a debating society. It is a platform to change our residents' lives, and therefore it is a platform that we must use to make decisions. So I'm telling them all the designs, all of these arguments. But what we need to do is talk about our track record. We have a great track record in Greenwich. 9 wellbeing hubs. The council has built the most affordable homes. 1,750 council homes being built. There's all sorts. A £60 million investment plan for the borough. A £1 million community energy for local groups to apply for projects to either decarbonise their private estate or run projects for the climate emergency in their area. So we have a great track record. And we don't spend time debating. We deliver. And what we've got to spend time now, post-election, and the way I'm planning to take on the next politics is get back out their strategy. We need to do more work on the ground, building a relationship with the resident base, letting them know what we're doing and taking on those issues that they have and showing them our leadership in resolving those issues.
What do you say to residents who feel like their voice has not been heard through the discussions on LTNs?
So our neighbourhood management schemes have been a very tough decision. I have to say, I speak to residents who are opposed and I speak to residents who are for. I think we've made the right decision because we are trying to tackle the climate emergency. And it takes time to shift that. We have this say-do gap at the moment. So my message to residents is stick with us, stay with us. Most parties that are standing in these kind of areas are supportive of our neighbourhood management scheme. The Greens are supportive of our neighbourhood management scheme, and we've got to demonstrate the air pollution that is being cleaned up as a result of it. Clean air must be the aim, and we've already started to see significant reductions in air pollution in these particular areas. However, there's still more to do. We've got to deal with the areas where traffic might have been pushed to, and we've got to get our mitigation in place in places like Charlton as soon as possible. And I want to say to our residents that that's exactly what we are working towards. We are striving to make sure that we can get the right traffic management, the right traffic policies in place to make their lives more convenient, more easier, and also more healthier, which taps back into our vision about supporting people's health.
Well, he's an impressive leader, isn't he?
Absolutely, he is. He's great.
So coming back to winning elections in May, what are the attack lines that we should be fighting on?
So I think, like I said earlier, I think we should be really focusing on some of the great things we're doing as Labour councils. There's so many really positive things. If it's house building, if it's high streets, if it's regeneration, to dealing with the key issues that people matter, like fly tipping, like bins, like litter. I think that's a really important message because if we don't talk about the good things we're doing, no one else is going to. And I think that leads straight in to a really important message that is being used in places around risking a well-run council if you vote for Greens.
I think that's a really, really important message. And I think we've got some brilliant councils in London. I'm going to use Hackney as an example, where probably the green threat is the highest. It's certainly been talked about the most in the press. I've got a slight vested interest because I used to work for Hackney Council, and Labour's been running it since 2002. Where we won the mayoralty, and Hackney looks very different to what it did back then. And the Labour council with the Labour mayor, they've transformed the borough. They before couldn't run the most basic of services, and now it's clean, it's beautiful, it's innovative. There's so much regeneration that's happening, so much council house building. And the problem is, a lot of people who live there now don't have that history and haven't seen Hackney in the bad days and are voting on international issues like Gaza. And it really, really frustrates me that they are putting all those amazing council services that people have worked really, really hard to deliver, and they're putting that at risk. And I don't think people understand that.
No, it is a real worry. And that's the job of the Labour Party, to tell people, to tell that story that you know so well. If people have moved in recently, it's not their fault they don't know it. We've got to be constantly reminding people of that journey and the risks taken by moving back in that.
Yeah. I also think we need to champion what the government is doing a little bit more. We seem to be holding back, and Labour has achieved in the last couple of years some really, really good things, and particularly if you are looking at the group of people that are most likely to vote Green in London, it's your younger renters. We have passed legislation that's about to come into force on the 1st of May of renters' rights. And these are the best protections that renters have ever had. And I know it's something that both of us have campaigned on in the past. And, we're delighted that it's finally coming through. And yet it takes up that much space on everyone's leaflet. And it's such a big, important issue. And it's going to make such a difference to these voters. We need to talk about these things a lot more. I mean,
I agree. But I think maybe one of the issues is it's quite difficult to tell people how they should be excited about a right that hasn't come into force yet. People telling someone that might have been evicted by a Section 21 that, you're not going to be evicted again. is lovely, but they still have been evicted, and they're telling people that rent rises are not going to be as high in the future when people think their rent at the moment is too expensive. It's probably quite a difficult message. I wonder in a year's time, people have experienced it. They might have not had the eviction they otherwise would have had. They might have not even had the rent rise they otherwise would have had. And maybe in a year's time, it might be something that resonates and be a far easier conversation to have.
Possibly. I still think we should talk more about it now. But it's not just renters' rights, it's employment rights, it's breakfast clubs, it's all those amazing things that we have been doing in government. We do need to champion it a little bit more. So moving on to something we mentioned earlier in the podcast is about the Muslim community moving a lot more to the Greens. Previously, Labour's had a lot of support from the Muslim community, but because of Gaza, that does feel like it's moving away, and we saw that in the Gordon and Denton by-election. We caught up with the leader of Enfield Council, Ergin Erbil, to tell us what he's saying.
Enfield has the highest concentration of Turkish-speaking, Kurdish-speaking people. Turkish is the second most common spoken language in the borough, and it's really important that we focus on serving all of our communities, our diverse community. I would argue that whilst other parties try to weaponize community politics, actually the reality on the ground is very different. When you speak to any household, you've got some people considering the Green Party, majority of the household considering the Labour Party, some who are non-voters. So it's not as black and white as some other parties make it out to be. The Turkish-speaking community in Enfield has been thriving for a very long time. I myself, I'm of Kurdish heritage. I believe I'm the first Kurdish leader in the UK. I was born and raised here, but my ethnicity means a lot to me, and as does my faith, Alevism. And it's really important that we represent the communities that live in our borough, saying that we work with all of our wonderful communities. I've got an Albanian-speaking community meeting coming up soon. We've always gone to all of our mosques, our churches, our synagogues, our temples, our cemevis, and we engage with all of our ethnic minority communities. The Green Party and the Independents, who are aligned with Jeremy Corbyn's Your Party, we've seen them leafleting in front of mosques, speaking about Palestine, speaking about Gaza. And listen, my family's from the Middle East. My family are Kurdish. They fled persecution. They fled massacres because of their Kurdish Alevi identity. They didn't migrate to the UK for the weather. They came here for freedom. They came here for democratic values because they are socialists and they're Democrats and they're minorities. And so when the Green Party and the Independents try to weaponize an issue like Gaza or any other Middle East conflict, Middle East genocide, Middle East issue, it just really frustrates me because at the end of the day, we're here to serve local communities and local services, whether it's bin collections, whether it's education, whether it's making sure we invest in our youth services properly. These elections have nothing to do with Kurdistan or Palestine. These issues have nothing to do with international issues. These elections are local issues. And I really don't enjoy the fact or appreciate the fact that someone like, I'm generalizing here, but someone named Theodore or Maximilian, who's just moved to North London a few years ago, who I would consider is a part of the gentrifying problem in North London, is trying to tell our local communities about Middle East conflicts that our communities are well aware of. I was door knocking in my ward yesterday in Edmonton Green, and Mr. Abdul answered the door. Mr. Abdul has been my resident for many years. I've known him. I live in Edmonton, and I've known Mr. Abdul for a long time. Whether he's had any bin issues, whether his children have had issues locally, and we know each other. I've served him for 8 years as his councillor. He did feel reluctant to vote Labour again because, in his own words, because of Starmer's position on the Middle East. I tried to explain to Mr. Abdul that these elections relate to local matters, and in Enfield, it's a two-horse race between us and the Conservatives or the Independents. They can't win in Enfield. The Greens have only put up 20 candidates, and the Independents about that many as well. They would need 32 to run the council. So after speaking to him for about 5 minutes on the doors, trying to explain that these are local elections, he has reassured me that he is going to vote Labour again in these local elections. What I find frustrating is that the Greens and the Independents are trying to take Mr. Abdul's vote for their own for their own campaign, knowing that they can't run the council. So what they're going to do is they're going to risk putting Enfield under Conservative rule in the next when we do the count of the votes. Now, what would this mean? This would mean that we won't be able to build council homes on golf courses. This would mean that we won't be able to build affordable homes because the Conservatives have already said they're against these things. So these things would impact Mr. Abdul's children, Mr. Abdul's grandchildren in being able to get onto the property ladder. These are local issues. I have confidence that Mr. Abdul and others will listen to our common sense and will vote the right way. We'll vote for Labour. What we do proactively is we visit all of our community centres. As I said, I'm going to be visiting the Albanian speaking community soon. I go to all of our churches, including our Caribbean churches. I go to all of the mosques, we go to all of the synagogues, we go to all of our temples. We have a beautiful Tamil Hindu temple in Edmonton, which I go to frequently. We have a beautiful Alevi Cultural Centre, which I go to frequently. So it's that engagement. And it's not just myself. We have hundreds of activists as the Labour Party in Enfield, and we have 63 candidates. My candidates and my team, we're visiting our community centres all the time. We have public meetings in multiple languages so we can get through to all of our communities.
Well, that was fascinating. And I think what I took away from that is, as Labour councillors, politicians, we need to just continue engaging with all communities. We're really strong on community engagement. We meet people where they are. We attend places of worship. We're very respectful of community needs. And I think we can't let the threat of the Greens to let us get knocked off course in the great work that we're doing already.
We're also, I mean, what's interesting that came out of that as well was that not only are we understand the community, often we are the community, and we are the community are us. You know, we've got representation across different communities, and it's really important for Labour to keep that going and keep ensuring that at the senior levels, we've got all the communities that we want to represent are our candidates, leader, councillor, MP, and whichever level it is, because it's by doing that, it's not just tokenistic. It means that we as a party can truly understand the issues facing that community, and you speak the language and understand how the community operates. And I think that's really important. We saw that there in Enfield.
Yeah, and representation is key, and we've got lots to say about that, but that's probably for another podcast. And we really hope you've enjoyed this podcast on what's happening in Inner London in particular and the Green vote.
Next time we'll be looking at what's happening with the Reform vote across London.
See you soon.
Bye.